your change of routines in the morning again, Steve. Paddy, what did you do this morning?
It's always better the second time.
Yeah. Okay, you're definitely in. Yeah, cool. Good. Oh no. Welcome back to this week's episode of the Live Perform Compete podcast. Ed and I are in the studio. Hello, Ed.
Hello again, Patrick.
And you know what? This is why I've figured out another reason. Basically, guys, if you're listening to this, this is take 2. I didn't plug in the microphone smart, but we were only about 10 minutes in, which was good. Unlike Ed, which has done a full episode without. Anyway,
and it's always better the second time.
I was looking at the sound bar, and the the waves are much bigger because it was picking up from the
laptop sound.
So anyway, now I know it's working. Because
listen, you won't do it again. I did it once, and that's the one thing I triple check every time now, just to make sure that thing's plugged in.
I can't actually guarantee that. I'm sure I'll figure it out.
Yeah, you will.
Anyway, how are you doing, Ed?
I'm great, Patrick.
You've had a good morning.
I've had a great morning.
Run the listeners through your morning.
We're both.
Do a little bit more of a faster brief.
What did I do this morning? Woke up this morning, started with a really early morning surf ski. That was great, and then sat down in my outdoor office that I do on a Thursday, which is this kind of club down on the beach. It's awesome, since balcony. Did some programming for a few hours there. Came to the gym, and I've just been kind of in meetings for the last 3 hours or so, and here we are.
And you haven't been doing many steps?
Haven't been doing any steps at all. Yeah.
Was it sunny when you were surf skiing? Was it muggy?
Nah, not really. It wasn't actually today. So the winds, Hong Kong's a monsoon climate, so we have 2 winds, and it's about this time every year the wind direction changes. And so our summers are humid, hot and wet, and our winters are cooler, windy and dry. And
you know what?
Yes.
With Hong Kong weather though, it's just it changes so quickly.
Well, it's Mid-Autumn Festival, so we just had Mid-Autumn Festival. That was our holiday. Was it last Friday?
Yeah.
And every year, I don't know how they do this. Someone listening is probably like, well, it's pretty obvious, mate. But I don't know how they do it. But as soon as Mid-Autumn Festival hits, the temperature drops within the next 2 days.
I don't mean in terms of like seasonal change. I mean in terms of like within 5 minutes, it's sun straight into the most aggressive rain you've ever. As someone from the UK, like.
But I mean, in the UK, you get like all 4 seasons a day. You'll have like summer, winter, then it's like snowing, and then it's like wet and raining.
But I feel like they're slower transitions. So like when a cloud will come over in Hong Kong, it's a bit grey, and it just absolutely bombs it down, and it's been completely blue skies. Whereas in the UK, it could be like grey all day, and you don't get a drop of rain.
Yeah, true. You know what you wake up with in the UK is pretty much how it's going to be all day and all year.
Classic. Great. Talk about the weather. Sigh.
But I mean it is a tropical climate here. But now the winds have changed. It's not great for surf skiing. The water gets really choppy.
Was the water dirty?
No, the water was amazing today.
Was it?
Yeah, because it has been pretty shit recently. It's been like really
swimming
really thick, loads of algae because of the temperature.
And rubbish.
But I think with the temperature dropping, the algae production is reduced now, and it was like really nice today. Like it was like a light green water, super clear. But because it was really windy, the surface was chopping out quite a bit, so I couldn't really see down. But it was really nice.
Were you wearing your Wimbledon hat again?
No, I didn't. You'd actually love my hat that I was wearing today.
Was it a bucket hat?
It wasn't a bucket hat. It was it was as in you would.
It was an earned apparel.
You would love to take the piss out of it. Is what I'm
was it the running cap?
No. It was like it's like Tammy bought it for me for Christmas, and I asked for it. But it's like a skull cap that sucks to your head. And it's got one of those little caps at the front that you flick up.
What, like one of the bike ones?
Yeah, like one of the bike ones, but not as cool as that.
Okay.
Yeah, basically it's got a couple of like bright streaks of yellow, so it's probably not enough for a boat to see me there until that actually ran over me. Yeah, but
it's like, aim for the boy.
Yeah. Ow! I feel quite cool when I wear it, but I thought when I put it on, I thought Paddy would fucking love it.
Yeah, when he was at Repulse, he'd be like, look at that guy.
Yeah. What about you, Paddy? What have you been doing this morning?
I had a nice, relaxing morning.
Yeah. No swimming, obviously.
No swimming. I got up, experienced no back pain, having squatted for the first time in about 6 months. Been dealing with essentially like inflammation of a disc in my lower back that I got. I don't know if we've talked about it on the podcast before, but I got it from essentially basically under recovered, aggressively under recovered, overworked both in my hinging pattern in the program that I was doing, and in general like a lot of stimulus and stress that was going on, along with what some people wouldn't deem as poor deadlift mechanics, but having chatted in a lot of depth with you and Ant about positionally what I was doing wrong. I was essentially setting up pretty much like a weightlifter, and that's just from I always thought flat back in deadlift, not a neutral spine. And for me, what looks like a flat back is me in extension being someone that is quite kyphotic, so naturally has quite a rounded upper back. So when I was setting up in extension every time, I built loads of strength and resilience in that slightly extended position. But I was doing deadlifts I was following a juggernaut program. I was doing deadlifts 3 times a week, and I'd never done that much deadlift volume before. Was sleeping like 4 to 6 hours on average.
And stress of a new job.
And very bad nutrition. Was eating a lot of junk food. Was doing like 2-inch deficit deadlifts one day, and then
you were basically performing a deadlift like an Olympic lifter would for their deadlift work. But I think the difference is like that set up for a clean deadlift, like chest up, a bit more of an arch back, is designed for you to lift something heavy probably 1 or 2 times. But you were doing, I remember the day that your back went, you had like a lot of segmented work. It was quite high volume, I think.
Well, actually it went
higher volume.
The program was ramping up. I think it was about week 5 or week 6 into it. The volume sets were going up, and I basically wanted to hit 180 from a 2-inch deficit for 8 or something like that.
That's a lot of reps.
And basically my lower back was feeling shit when I woke up, and I was like, I was feeling tight, and I was basically just like constantly stretching it, which is not what you should be doing for an injury. Because essentially putting my back into my lower back into full flexion to like try and ease the pain, which was essentially aggravating it more, creating more stress in the lower back. And then went for it. 140 felt horrific, and I was just like, fuck it, put another blue on. Classic me. It basically did 3 reps, and then it went like felt a twinge and had to lie down on the floor, and from there I've basically been just dealing with the pain. Initially stopped doing any deadlifts, and then it got better, but I was still feeling the pain. But I then started to incorporate hinging and squatting again, and it was just staying the same, like it wasn't getting better. And I knew that I could have pushed through the programs and carried on squatting, carried on deadlifting, but I knew that the issue wasn't going to get addressed. So I was like, okay, I need to stop. I basically was like, I'm going to stop everything.
Rebuild.
And rebuild from there, and basically gave myself essentially like 8 weeks of nothing which was like causing me to have to brace. I was doing lots of like single leg bodybuilding and like leg extensions, machines, and like basically just getting a pump, and then doing really simple monostructural conditioning, like dumbbell snatches or kettlebell swings or burpees or anything that was causing me to hinge, even with body weight for volume. And wasn't really noticing that much of a difference, and then started adding in more core, which was something else that we'd established. Was my core was essentially pretty inactive. My hip flexors were taking over a lot.
You just also hadn't been engaging your trunk because you'd been so used to setting up an extension that you hadn't put a whole lot of demand on your trunk anyway.
So all of those things combined, and anyway, the sleep has got better, particularly in the last sort of 2 or 3 weeks. Prioritised it a little bit more, getting consistently 7 to 7.5 most nights now, compared to before it was under 7. And I haven't really I've probably had a handful of 8-hour sleeps in Hong Kong so far, which is frustrating, and I am continuing to like build on it and do what I can, but there's a lot of things that get in the way of it at the moment. Anyway, so yesterday was the first time that I squatted properly, as in like it was a safety bar squat, but first time in about 6 months, and it felt good. During my lower back and my adductors were both sore, but it was muscular fatigue that was built up in my lower back. It wasn't like nervy or a disc inflammation.
That's
I
good.
felt, and which I was expecting considering how I squat anyway, which is quite a lot of hip flexion.
Yeah, much more hip dominant squat like me.
Yeah. And anyway, I was expecting or anticipating some lower back pain when I woke up, which is when I'm in the most pain. That's when I feel my back the most, or had done for the last 6 months. Didn't wake up with any, which was great. And then celebrated by going for a walk, listening to a podcast in the morning, because like I said before this got cut off, we realised it wasn't recording. I've been walking into work for the last week and a half, really enjoying like getting the sunlight in early doors as I get into work, so I wanted to do the same this morning and felt good. Came in, did some programming at a coffee shop, and had a PT. Now we're here.
What are you reading at the moment? Or are you podcasting?
I was actually listening to, you know how much I love him, James Smith. It was actually really good. Like, would recommend it for a book club. I think it would resonate particularly with
James Smith's book or his audio book?
No, it was his podcast. Yeah. So you know that Chris Williamson guy that we listened to the TED talk of.
Yeah.
That I was had initially didn't enjoy that much of his content. It kind of enjoyed his TED talk, but not didn't love it. It didn't make me want to go and listen to his podcast.
Yeah.
Anyway, James Smith had him as a guest on his podcast with his mate Diran, and it was really good.
Nice.
It resonated a lot with me because they're very similar to me in terms of their personalities. They're a couple of years older, so they're in their early 30s, but they were talking about their experiences in their late 20s, which is where I'm at the moment, and they're kind of going through that transitional period of kind of when you're a young man, your identification. What they were talking about in the podcast is things like how many women you're sleeping with, like how fast you can chin a pint, like how big you are, all of these superficial markers of success or dominance or whatever it is. And then I can't remember what the term was. It was essentially like a midlife crisis, menopause. That's what we called it.
Yeah.
So like late 20s, when you realise that that isn't what is fulfilling in life, and that doesn't bring you any happiness, and you kind of revert back to older ways where you start to seek deeper connections, more meaningful relationships. You start to, he would use a really good example of people that were started bodybuilding and were all purely doing it for vanity and for sex appeal and for, like we talked about in the previous podcast, for body image and for validation from peers, etc. And then as they get towards those late 20s, they start to realise that's not fulfilling and they can't be asked to do it for those reasons, and instead they start to they go back to sports that they played when they were they're 18, or they join CrossFit, or they start BJJ, these things that are more community driven and that are more functional, or that they have a greater sense of enjoyment out of. And all of those things were just resonating with me, which I'm kind of working through at the moment myself. So I really enjoyed it. I'm not sure how much some of the girls might take out of it, but I think it would be actually a good insight for them to see how the male mind at our ages or my age operates. So yeah, definitely for me and Al and Liam, it would resonate a little bit more than with you.
I mean, I can certainly remember. I would still say I'm going through that transition to an extent.
But towards the end.
Yeah, the journey. I don't know if it will ever actually end. I'm sure this is just going to be a journey that continues to transition into new discoveries and new definitions of fulfillment and purpose, and it's just you becoming more and more aware of it the deeper you go through the journey. But I actually just posted on my Instagram today as well. I reposted something from the holistic psychologist.
Yeah, I saw that.
Really which is very similar. Of talking about something coma. It's a period of time after you start your awakening process.
Yeah.
When we say awakening, it's often referred to as like the spiritual journey you start, where you start to kind of ask kind of questions like, what's the meaning of life? How do I find fulfillment? You start, generally becoming a little bit more in tune, in touch with nature. You seek, you really seek deeper connections with humans and the world around you. And when you start that process, you start to realize how much shit is not actually that important in your life. You kind of go into this withdrawn period where you spend a lot more time alone with your thoughts. And I really remember that time, kind of withdrawing myself from my social circles and spending just generally more time alone. And then I've kind of bounced back out of that now, and am now seeking, deeper relationships and quality relationships, and have much clearer definitions on what my priorities are and what I want to do on a daily basis. So yeah, kind of in similar vein to what you listened to.
Yeah, I mean, and they talked about, just as they were talking about nature, like in that podcast again, and it creates. It's so good, like I've been, especially that's what I've been exploring a lot in Hong Kong with, how amazing, and we talked about this podcast already,
yeah.
But like how amazing the scenery is, and it just grounds you so much. You have a sense of how small you are and how big the world is, and how little that small piece of anxiety that you've got bubbling below the surface, that it means nothing in the grand scheme of things. And there's killer whales with much bigger problems.
I think the more spiritual I become, the more connected I feel with nature and the world. That like I know this sounds, to listen to myself saying this now and thinking about myself 7 years ago, kind of seems crazy, almost laughing to myself as I say it, but just how connected we all are and this all is, and just how much I want to give back to nature and the universe. I know that sounds a bit crazy, but and listening to nature and the universe a lot more. And I think that's just, some people call it the gut feeling, people call it intuition, some people call it fate, but just being a bit more aware of the signals that the world's giving me and actually listening to them a little bit more.
Yeah, like just more introversion, more introspection.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I guess we should address not the elephant in the room, but the reason why, the premise behind the podcast that we want to talk about today, which is my wrist. So
why don't I let me take over the interviewer role?
Okay.
Then Patrick.
So, you know what? I was thinking about this the other day. I think we are now essentially, we co-host pretty regularly. Like listening back, especially to like the more recent nutrition podcasts and stuff like that. It's more, we just bounce off each other.
No.
It's not one-sided.
No, that's what
I'm not
doing
into you. Yeah.
So you currently stood with a sock on your wrist.
Yeah.
But nothing else. There's no cast. There's no sling.
No.
Talk us through the story.
Okay, fine. So, was it? No, it wasn't last Thursday. Two Thursdays ago. It was, could have been so different. Ant could have said, "Should we go for our regular swim on Thursday?" And I'd have been like, "Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Let's carry on swimming." Instead, we were like, "Should we go for a hike instead? We'll just spice it up." We were both getting a little bit tired of the swimming, to be fair, like dragging ourselves down, like, oh, I have to swallow another nappy. Anyway, we went over back to like mainland. I can't remember. Ma On Shan is it called?
Ma On Shan,
Yeah, that's good.
New territories.
Anyway, it was a bit of a mish to get there, but Ant had shown me videos that there's a waterfall that you can jump off like a tall rock into this waterfall, and it looked nice, looked fun. Anyway, we started to arrive there, and it started to chuck it down. And like I was talking about earlier, the Hong Kong weather, when a couple of grey clouds come over, it chucks it down like the most aggressive rain, if you're listening from the UK, that you've ever seen. And it was chucking it down a lot. And the rocks, we had to hike probably about 30-40 minutes up to where the waterfall is. And there are these large rocks that kind of have to boulder over and around, and it was pretty slippery. Managed to get up to the waterfall. And it was still chucking it down. Basically, you have to like climb up and around onto where the rock is. You've been there before, yeah? And normally when it's dry, you can basically take a running jump off of the rock into the water. Now the actual cliff face essentially is about 20-25 feet up from where the edge of the rock is to where you can jump into the water. But it's at kind of like a slight angle. It's not straight down, and it's not like 45 degrees, but you have to jump out as well as down. Anyway, it was so wet and rainy and slippery on the rocks that we had to essentially scoot down right onto the edge of the rock on our bums, because if you'd have walked down, you would have slipped and fallen. Lol. So you had to like scoot down on your bum to get to the edge. And Ant went first, and he was wearing his trainers. I was wearing a pair of Vans, trusty old Vans, as I do. Anyway, I decided to take them off because I was like, oh, they'll be a bit slippery. So maybe I'll wear my bare feet
Trusting
instead.
a rip on the bottom of my feet instead.
Which I did. I trusted it. Anyway, got stood up to jump off the rock, and as I stood up, saw the rock that was basically directly underneath me, and was like, oh, okay, I need to jump pretty far forward. So as I kind of scooched my toes over to hang over the edge of the cliff, with essentially the goal being to push off the rock laterally out. As I went to push off, my feet basically slipped from underneath me, and instead of pushing off the rock, I basically fell straight down 25 feet onto the rock that I was trying to jump away from. And
This is the best I've heard you explain the story.
okay, cool, good.
Almost got shivers thinking about it.
And I actually get shivers thinking about Ant's scream.
Yeah.
It was really genuine. And anyway, as I was falling down, I saw the rock coming, and I was like, oh fuck, I need to turn my body. And I don't know why, but I think it's because I've had a horrific ankle injury in the past, and I was like, I don't want my feet to hit this rock. So instead, I thought a better option would be to try and land in like a push-up position on my belly. So as I was falling, I tried to turn my body onto the rock, and obviously it wasn't really enough time to be able to fully turn. I hit my hip and my rib, but the first thing that hit was my hand. But it wasn't my palm stretched out like a high five. It was actually the other way, as if my hand was curled up in a fist. Yeah. So the back of my hand hit the rock, and then it was full force of me plus 25 foot's worth of falling onto a hard surface, ended in my wrist breaking down about an inch away from where my forearm bones are. Now those of you that follow me on Instagram, Patrick_James_coach, like and follow, tell your family, tell your friends, would have seen the story that I posted. It's a pretty gnarly looking x-ray. I hit the rock, bounced off the rock into the water, and had heard Ant scream, and it was like, Paddy! Like he thought
you were dead.
He thought I was dead, yeah, basically. And I felt a huge, even though it was really painful, I felt a huge sense of relief because I was like, I'm not dead.
Yeah.
Cool. Because I did think that as I was falling, I was like, fuck, this is it. So I bounced off the rock into the water and instantly put my thumb up to let them know that I was okay. And then the adrenaline was still going through my body, but I was like, oh, okay, my wrist is fucked. I thought
straight away.
Yeah, I thought my ribs were broken as well, to be fair, because the impact actually was just superficial. Anyway, I had to swim out of the water, got to the edge, and Anne was basically clutching my hand and was like, oh mate, I think my wrist's broken. I was like not like screaming in pain, but I was like, yeah, it's fucked. and it didn't actually look that bad. Basically what happened is the hand got shifted down an inch. So there was a tendon or two that was attached, but other than that, basically my hand had basically completely separated from my two forearm bones. So it was pretty much a couple of tendons and my skin that was holding my hand onto its arm. But we didn't really see that, and the swelling started to come up, obviously. I was in shock for about 10 minutes, like legs were shaking and stuff, and then we were like, right, okay, we need to get down. But neither of us really knew how bad the injury was, and if I'd have known how bad it was, I probably would have been in a lot more pain.
Yeah.
But I didn't. I thought, it might be broken, it might not, but it just hurts like fuck right now.
Yeah.
Anyway, I had to get down 30-40 minutes. Had to hike back down where we come up. Bearing in mind, we pretty much scrambled up, and it was still raining. Went back down, and I was like, one hand in a lot of pain, probably like a 7 out of 10 pain, and was like scooting my bum down on rocks, almost hitting my hand multiple times on the way back down, like propping it up with my other arm. And then we managed to get into a cab eventually, went to the hospital, went to a private hospital, and they quoted us 250k, and my health insurance said they'd cover 80. We're like, cool. Well, sorry, that's 250,000 Hong Kong dollars, which is 25,000 pounds roughly, which is a lot of money for wrist surgery. So, and I don't have that cash sitting around. So we were like, all right, we need to go to the public hospital. Anyway, they'd done the x-rays, and before we left the private hospital, they said what happened. But once we'd gone and had the x-rays, Ant was looking at the x-rays, because Ant came with me to the hospital, did me an absolute solid the whole day, actually, to be fair.
You did also break your wrist, so.
Yeah, I mean, he probably only stuck around for guilt,
Yeah.
with guilt.
Yeah.
So he was looking at the x-rays, didn't see the one that like showed the proper break, and just saw one of my hand straight down. It was just a tiny little chip on the side, and he showed me. It was like, oh mate, you're fine. I was like, oh cool. Like, was obviously in pain, but I was like, oh, it's probably just, you know, like inflammation and stuff, and a bit of like shock still. And then we went into the surgeon chatted to us, and he showed the different x-ray that we hadn't seen, and we both walked in. We were like, oh, that's fucked. And he was like, yeah, that's the technical term for it. He was like, how did you do this? And I was like, well, firstly he was like, whatever you did, like, must have been a horrendous amount of force to have done this to you, with like, you know, like, you've got very strong bones, you've got strong muscles, strong connective tissue. For you to have done this, like, what did you do? I was like, oh, I fell about 25 feet off of the waterfall onto a rock. He was like, yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, we went to the public hospital. Fortunately, John So, shout out to John So,
one of our members, legend,
is a doctor at the public hospital that we went to, and he basically helped me along. Aggressively jabbed, aggressively took some bloods out of me, which was pretty painful. I don't think he had to jam the needle in that hard, but I think he was trying to get his own back on me, making him do X, Y, Z. And then, they had scheduled the operation a couple of days later, so I was able to go home, while they had initially tried to realign my wrist, which was pretty painful. Basically, they gave me some local anaesthetic, but then were kind of manipulating my hand back into place. It's like, you know, when you have your tooth taken out,
you can feel it all wiggling around, but you
don't feel the pain, but you feel the pressure, and it's like, it's uncomfortable, but more in the sense you're like, oh, this isn't a normal human feeling to have. So like, I was feeling, one guy was pulling my arm back, the other guy was pulling my hand forward and like wiggling it quite aggressively around. Anyway, that happened, and there's a photo that was basically when I was fully externally rotated with both of my hands. One hand was on straight, and the other hand was at about like a 45-degree angle the other way. It looked hilarious.
I mean, you did have to go. You had 2 more days before you had the operation as well. So basically, you were kind of like allowed to be a free man with a very weird looking
with
wrist.
a wonky hand. Yeah, exactly.
Before the operation.
Yeah, and then had the operation where they basically put a plate and a couple of screws in, and screwed my forearm into the wrist bones again, and it went well. Got it at the moment. Didn't have to wear a cast. I've just got a bandage. Had a bandage around it, and it's been 10 days now since the operation, and good. Like, I'm probably at like a 1 out of 10 pain.
It's pretty crazy.
Crazy, and I've already got some movement in the wrist. You know, I can make small circles. I can, like, obviously there's still quite a bit of swelling and a bit of pain when I move the wrist around, and there's a lot of obviously range of motion issues, but that will hopefully most of the range will get restored in time. I'm not expecting it to be able to be, it's not going to be the same as my other wrist probably, but
you never know. The body is pretty crazy, pretty amazing healing machine.
Yeah, that's true. The hardware, we're not sure whether it will stay on or not. Some people have had this kind of operation and the metal stays in forever if it doesn't bother them, and then some people it might bother them and they need to get it taken out. But that's more like a 6-month, year-long journey. But yeah, so maybe like 6 to 12 weeks. I've had different sort of time lengths from different people. It's only been 10 days, so very much early doors, but feeling good.
What's your general what's your headspace like at the moment around the injury?
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excited to, like, I mean, yesterday we were talking about kind of creating a plan for you, training wise, to create some really meaningful adaptations for your lower body.
Yeah.
Talk us through your headspace at the moment.
So the first, obviously when it happened, the first day, I was in a lot of shock and stuff. Actually, I had a bit of a sob in the taxi when I got there on my own. I think it all kind of hit me a little bit. But then after that,
and what was the, sorry if you don't mind me interrupting, what was the sob about? Was it that
I actually don't know. Like, I was just
an emotional.
Yeah, it was an emotional day. Like, a lot of stress going on, and basically this was when we had to go from the private hospital to the public hospital, and I'd never been to a public hospital in I was about to say Kuwait, in Hong Kong, so I had no idea what to expect, but everyone was telling me, the sort of good quality standards, just like waiting hours. And I think, I was expecting to be waiting, and at this point, I was actually in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
It had gone from a 7 to about an 8 out of 10 because it just been wonky on my wrist. Everything was starting the adrenaline and everything had worn off from the initial accident, and I was just in a lot of pain, and obviously my hip was really sore, my ribs were really sore, my shoulder, my arm on the other side and everything. So was sat in the taxi, was listening to music, and it was just obviously like replaying the events in my head, and I actually was thinking, I think I was actually like, fucking hell, I'm so lucky that I didn't smash my head, and was like, it could have actually been like, this, bear in mind, this is the day before my 28th birthday, and it's good banter because I was joking like a couple of weeks before, I was like, I've almost survived Club 27,
what Izzy said when she was listening to our podcast that we recorded the week before that.
Yeah.
You said,
I've been saying for a while, I'm due a major accident.
And I think I said, like, don't say that, don't put that into the atmosphere.
Yeah. I did tell you, like, I told you when I arrived, I was like, I'm accident prone as hell, something's going to happen.
I mean, the thing is,
Don't take it personally.
you say you're accident prone, like you just have this bad luck, but you also put yourself in situations where the likelihood of injury is exceptionally, like, considerably higher than the average human being.
Yeah, just happy-go-lucky.
Yeah.
Just fucking deal with it.
Because the thing is, I know that, I've also had a lot of injuries in my past, most of which have been, like somewhat uncontrollable. It's been like an accident or, playing sport and something, our body's been put into a position that it couldn't handle and something snapped or broken. But not really none of my injuries have been linked to like me doing something stupid.
Being an idiot.
Yeah. But seeing you around the gym and you doing stupid shit, like trying to jump from one pull-up bar to the other, I watch and I'm like, I kind of want to do that. But then I'm also like, no. Like I put my sensible hat on, being like, think how fucked your body is, Ed.
Yeah.
There's just don't have another reason to be in hospital for 6 months and for it to be something you could have controlled.
My hamstring is still actually sore. That was a month ago. Basically, I tried to kick a muscle-up ring, but as like a high kick, like a scissor kick.
With no warm-up.
With no warm-up, and almost tore my hamstrings clean off the bone. Like felt a pop and went down on the floor and thought I'd actually torn it. I've definitely done some damage to it for sure, because like even hinging now feels a little bit funky.
Okay.
Anyway.
Oh, let's go. I want to go back to
me crying.
No, to your headspace. So you go from hospital to the other. I think the first thing you're going through is like shock, and then probably it sounds like just a bit of gratitude.
Yeah.
That it's only this, and it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, realization.
What's the kind of next cycle that you find your headspace going through?
Yeah. So then after that, I was thinking about what it means, like the ramifications, and having gone through a nasty ankle injury 5 years ago, basically dislocated my ankle pretty horrifically by getting crushed by some scaffolding, which was that was no fault of my own. And that was a long road. Definitely didn't do the rehab as best as I could and tried to rush into things too early. But my ankle was bad for a good year and a half, 2 years before there was kind of much function there.
Yeah.
And I was kind of anticipating that a little bit. I was like, oh my.
So kind of flashbacks to the ankle.
Flashbacks to like how bad the rehab was, and like being, because it was an ankle. Obviously you're on crutches, which makes you have to rely on people so much. So I was fortunate that it was my wrist this time. It was my dominant hand, but still a lot easier to get around with one hand rather than one leg.
Yeah.
But I was thinking those things, and I basically had a hiccup for about an hour where I was like, like I was feeling good about my training. I'd literally just finished an 8-week block.
Your first ever program.
And I was about to start. My bench press was starting to feel stronger again. Was hoping to hit old PBs again over the next 8 week. Was going to incorporate squatting again, incorporate hinging again after the back injury, and then this came along and was just like, oh, for fuck's sake. But
so that's like almost like anger and frustration.
And expecting the long road ahead and knowing what it takes. And then honestly, within about 2 hours, I got over that. And
Acceptance.
I accepted it, and was just like, you know what, like there's nothing that you can do. You can't change anything. The only thing you can change is your attitude and your mindset towards it. and from then I haven't felt, obviously every now and again I'll be like, oh, fuck, I wish we'd just bench or do this. But
it's so funny, like hearing your cycle of emotion from the point of the injury happening to you then coming round to, okay, this has happened, now what are we going to do about it? But it's like the shock in the actual moment where it happens, and then the denial, which is like, there's nothing wrong with it.
It's not like fractures.
It's just a little scratch, will be fine. And then the anger and the frustration of like, fuck, how have I done this again? How am I in this position? Like, things were going so well, why me? And then and then the acceptance part where it's kind of like, okay, well, there's nothing I can do about it now. Control the controllables. Let's create a plan to get me back to 100% again. And that cycle is something that, I started to learn and read a lot about every time I pick up an injury. I had 5 years as a rugby player where it was almost at the start of every season, I had like another 6 months where I was out from the sport, injury. It would be like shoulder, shoulder, knee, shoulder. And every time you go through one of these cycles, you get a little bit better at comprehending and accepting. And so it sounds like, for someone else who's also been through a lot of injury in your past, like the speed at which you went from, anger and denial through to acceptance was almost like 24 hours.
Last time. And I actually, like, without kind of trying to blow my own trumpet, like I'm quite proud of my mental strength that I've been able to do that, and I genuinely do feel very like positive about it, and it isn't affecting me. The only thing is just every now and again when I'm going down to the floor to train, and I'm like, oh, I want to do that, but then I'll change that train of thought instantly. Like that subconscious thought, I'll then turn into a conscious thought and be like, no, we're not going to think about that in a negative way. Let's change it.
I mean, it is something I think you should be proud of. I mean, we see it all the time as coaches and helping people to get out of pain or navigate injury. People can be stuck in these cycles for weeks, months, years, years sometimes before they get around to the point where it's like, listen, it is what it is. What are you going to do about it? And I think it's very reflective on your personality, your values, and things that you believe in. Because the injury at the end of the day, yes, it's physical trauma to your body, but it's just another setback, right? And we have setbacks all the time in life. It can be with our careers, our relationships, things like COVID, things that happen that we can't do anything about, and then we have the decision, we have the choice in how we respond to it. Rather than just reacting emotionally, like how are you actually going to respond and what are you going to do about it? And I think, looking at this team, and it's these type of things are things we talk about all the time. We try to, develop the emotional intelligence in people to have this perspective when hard things happen, how are you going to deal with it, how are you going to respond? And it's really cool to see the way that you've dealt with it so fast. And I would have confidence that if the rest of our team was to deal with something similar, that they too would be able to respond in a similar way. But I think there are other things that we have to consider in your case that have kind of worked maybe for and against you. Good things are like you got the diagnosis straight away. Sometimes people can sit for really, really long periods of time and not know why they're in pain, not know why they have chronic issues, not know why something isn't improving. And when you're in that situation, it can be a little bit more daunting. But there's still a lot of aspects of your risk you don't know. We don't know if you're going to get full range back. We don't know if there's going to be any loss of function.
How aligned it is.
We don't know how aligned it is. Don't know if you're going to get back to all your strength. And those are things, to be honest, like no doctor and no physio can ever tell you. And I think that's an important thing we have to understand with injury, is that everyone has their own opinion and everyone's different. We all heal at different rates. We all have different comeback stories, generally speaking. And I don't mean this to discredit doctors and physios and the internet, but most of the stories and things we get told are doom and gloom. Like things aren't going to be good, and I think I can understand that a lot of that as a protective mechanism. Like, don't promise promise people something that they may not ever achieve, and you be held accountable. It's almost better to downplay it, and if they achieve more, then that's a win. But at the same time, a lot of people take that for gospel, right? They hear that you're never going to get back to 100%, and they live and breathe that. That, well, why should I bother, because I'll never get back to where I was before. But in truth be told, you've experienced it, I've experienced it so many times as well. Like, you have the power to do whatever you want with your body. And the human body is incredible. It's amazing how much you can heal from pretty horrific things.
Yeah, I mean, like the fact that it's been 10 days and already like I can move my wrist as much as I'm moving it right now on the video. It's crazy. Like, I can't pick anything heavy up with my hand, but just being able to like kind of pick up a pen, which like of 2 or 3 days after the operation was excruciating, and I was taking painkillers. I was still really groggy from the general anaesthetic, and that was, I actually think probably after post-operation, that was probably up there with like top 2-3 most painful things I've ever experienced in my life.
Yeah.
For about 6 hours, I was like, my toes were tensing in the bed. So they also gave me a local anaesthetic injection into my neck.
Into your neck?
Yeah, so a bunch of nerves that run all the way down the arm. They injected the local anaesthetic into my neck, but first when I was awake, and then they gave me the general to put me to sleep. They actually said like, you don't need to have the general, but I was just like, I don't want it to be like move my arm around, operating on my hand while I can sense it. And if I'm there for an hour, I'd rather just like conk out, you know.
That's quite fun getting a general.
Exactly. Yeah, you try and fight it, and you're like, no, I'm not going to sleep.
1, 2, I'm going to make it to 10.
Yeah, exactly. So that anaesthetic lasted from, I had the operation at 8 o'clock in the morning, woke up at about 10. It then wore off at 9 p.m. Like my arm was completely dead. It was like hilarious. You know when you sleep on your arm,
Yeah.
and it's like fully gone, like there's literally nothing. You can't feel or move it at all. That's what it was like for like a good like 12 hours basically. And then at about 9-10 o'clock, when everyone's like winding down, everyone's starting to go to bed, the lights are getting turned off in the ward. That's when the pain started to hit me, and I was like, oh, like I could start to get feeling back in my hand, and then it got worse and worse, and then it was like, fuck me. Sorry, Mum, for swearing. So
Was that where you asked? Did you ask for a jab?
No, so I initially didn't. I was like, I need some, because they asked me during the day actually, like, oh, do you want any painkillers? I was like, I don't need any, like, I don't feel anything, I'm fine, just save it. Save it till later when it wears off. And then they gave me some pills, like some tramadol, which did nothing, and some paracetamol as well. And then they gave me some more, like 2 hours later, and I was still in loads of pain. I was like, why have I not had an injection yet? I was actually getting, and you know when you ring the nurses bell, they would take like 15 minutes to answer.
Yeah.
First world problems, but
Yeah.
I was like, I'm in a lot of pain. I was starting to get like a little bit snappy. I was like, I need something that's stronger than this. Anyway, they gave me an injection in my bum, no, in my shoulder.
Yeah.
And then that did the trick, gave me enough to sleep. And then for the next 2-3 days, I was in quite a bit of pain. Then was just feeling so rough from the general anaesthetic and taking all the painkillers. I decided to just stop taking the painkillers. And actually that evening had a much better sleep. And now, having taken them for 4 or 5 days, whatever, I feel much, much better.
Talk me through how you're mapping out this recovery process then.
So I've got an appointment with the physio again next Monday. So I had one 2 days ago, and she was like, actually your wrist is far gone, as in like you're already a couple of weeks ahead than what I would expect. And she was like, you've obviously been moving it a lot, because when I asked the surgeon afterwards, I was like, how much can I move? Because I know that like half of the battle is if it's immobile for so long, like all the tendons seize up, the swelling's there, the inflammation, everything.
Yeah.
So as much as you can tolerate getting movement through, and I knew that they'd screwed in my bones, so it's not that they're going anywhere. I'm not gonna move a bone out of place by just wiggling my wrist around. So I was like, how much can I push it? And they were like, yeah, move it a lot. Don't force it on any surfaces or anything like that, but just keep moving it. So I was just moving it loads, like trying to get as much movement and range from my fingers. Obviously it's painful, but it's like minor. And anyway, went to the physio, and she was like, you've obviously been moving it loads. It's looking really good. But forgot my referral letter, so she couldn't give me some extra exercises or something like that. Anyway, I'm seeing her next Monday, and I've been doing lots more movement. It's feeling better every day. So I'll basically take every week as it comes, pretty much, or every day as it comes, really, of just assessing what I can and can't do with the wrist, and moving it around. And then obviously I expect the physio will give me more updates on like clearance to do X, Y, Z as I go. But in terms of training for everything else, I'm doing.
So I think real firstly, took a week off. I think you took about a week and a half off.
Yeah, about 9 days. Yeah, I took off.
And I remember you were ready to get back into it, and I kind of said, Paddy, like just hold off a little bit longer.
Yeah.
I think it's important to recognise when you have like trauma to a joint, and it wasn't just to your joint, like your whole body took a bit of a battering, that there's a lot of information that's occurred because of that. And we have to also understand that training, hard training, is also, you know, deliberately creating inflammation on the body, because we're basically applying stress to the body and the hope the body adapts to it. So I think I kind of just jumped in real quick and said, Paddy, like, let the inflammation on the wrist and the body subside first, let the healing happen there before we start adding any extra stress to the body with hard training. So I think that first week kind of just did walking, sat on the bike a few times. I think this week now is the first time you got back to some kind of structured training.
Yeah, and you know, like I was aware, and my ego obviously went, Ed, you're wrong, and was like, my thought process was, if I do some form of resistance training, that's going to offset some atrophy that could occur.
Yeah.
And like, you know, being insecure as we all are, was like, I don't want to get small. I want to make sure that I'm not losing any muscle. So I was like, I need to be training a week off's too long, etc.
Yeah.
But actually, you know, like then after that conversation, was thinking about how beat up I did feel,
Yeah.
how groggy I was feeling. Like, you know, I don't get out of bed in the morning and I'm not demotivated. So like I don't walk around and I'm like, oh, I can't be asked for today. Like I'm always like, right, what are we doing now? Let's go do this, let's do that. Let's go get the day or whatever. And I was waking up and I just couldn't be asked to do anything. I was like sat on the sofa, like scrolling Instagram in my pants for like a good hour before I even made a coffee or something. I was like, oh, I can't be asked. And I knew that was just like, all of that was just saying, you know, you shouldn't do anything. You should just chill out. So, but it's nice to have got some good sleep or better sleep under my belt, to be eating better. Obviously, it was hard for me to cook for myself, so wasn't able to eat as well as.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, what other things outside of training are you doing to try to really give yourself the best chance of recovery?
I haven't had a drop of alcohol since. I have.
Is there a point in time where you think you're going to reintroduce that, or take it as it goes?
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not gonna be like, oh, I'm doing sober October or anything like that. And like, if someone says, do you want a beer? And I want a beer, I'll have it. Like, I think it was more like drinking while I was in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
Like, that was saying to me, like, if I'm in pain, there's obviously lots of inflammation going on in my body, and there obviously still is loads.
Yeah.
But comparatively, you know, like if I had a beer right now, it's not gonna like, I'm not gonna die, but I might feel a little bit rough from it maybe the next day, who knows. But yeah, I mean, I'm not doing much on time off whenever I'm not working. I'm working and then just taking it easy. Gonna try and get out into some nature this weekend. Go for a gentle hike, but you know, I'm not gonna be doing
Waterfall jumps.
lots of waterfall jumps or anything too dangerous, anything too stressful. Try and prioritize the sleep, and it's just, you know, this week it's just been nice to get back into the routine, and it might not have felt like everyone else that I've been gone that long, but you know, when you're sat and staring at a ceiling in a hospital bed, those hours go by slowly. So I felt like I'd been away for a while.
Has this whole process of like the hospital, the operation, the isolation, like made you more grateful for anything?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
What would you mind sharing?
Yeah, just here, like being definitely grateful of my body, and I was feeling pretty negative about my body while I was finishing that program anyway, just because of my back and stuff like that. And I love simple strength training. I love squat, bench, deadlift, bodybuilding accessories, and monostructural cardio. Like, I could train like that for the rest of my life, and think most people should just train like that. They don't need to do any kipping, pull-ups, etc. But was really wanted to, you know, obviously it's all about perspective, but it was like, and then started having those thoughts like, oh, I wish I could go back to how I was feeling yesterday, which obviously is then a negative spiral. And in this last week as well, I've been thinking, you know, oh, it'll be good when I get back to this. And I was like, actually, let's not think that way, and let's not think, oh, I can't wait for 12 weeks time. Let's think about what's going on day to day that I can enjoy the process of slowly, like, getting my legs stronger, enjoy the process of being able to squat again, enjoy the process of getting more mobility in my wrist, being able to not have to ice my wrist every evening when I get home. Like, enjoy those things rather than putting all your eggs in one basket for the 10 weeks or the 12 weeks when you're able to do a push-up again.
The outcome versus the process. We talk about it all the time.
I've got a drafted post that I'm just about to put
Nice.
up this evening on Instagram about that.
Nice. But I think that's exactly what you just talked about. Like, it's important to have the goal to be able to, you set a goal, to get back to be able to do life again, whatever that looks like. But once you have that goal set, okay, well then what can I control day to day? How can I enjoy this process? And the more you can enjoy it, and the more you can focus on the day to day, you will eventually end up with your outcome. Versus the contrary, just focusing on I put a post up about the gap versus the gain, which is the same concept. So you have this end goal you want to achieve. Are you focusing on the gap or the gain? So the gap is like how far away you are from the goal. So people who focus on the gap, it's like, fuck it, I'm so far away. My wrist can only do this. I need to be able to do this. I have at least another 3 months. You're focusing on the distance between where you're at now and where you want to get to. And the gain is actually looking about what you have achieved so far. Well, what have I actually achieved so far? Wow, my wrist has gone from being split in half, hanging off the wrong way, to I'm now being able to move it at a 1 out of 10 pain. That's incredible. I'm training my legs. I'm creating routine and structure. I'm appreciating the other things. So I think the gap and the gain is a really important. It's kind of the same concept of glass half full versus glass half empty. It's just a matter of perspective.
Yeah, and going back to the original question you asked, that's kind of like the physical side of it, but also like the mental side of it, of just being able to work and have a purpose. I felt very much very similar to how I felt during furlough back in the UK, where you have to create the purpose during the day to how get something out of the day. Like, what am I going to achieve, or what am I going to do today that's worthwhile? And I was doing nothing. I was just literally sitting on the sofa. And I know obviously I need to rest, and I needed to not do anything and recover. But I also felt literally like a slob. I was like, I've just it was people's last day on earth today, and I've just sat on the sofa and watched Squid Game.
Yeah.
Just pointless. So to be able to come back and to be able to see my clients and to be able to be in this environment again and see everyone, and I just love it. Yeah.
So what are, maybe to summarize then, what are the gifts of injury right now that you can really relate to and resonate with? What are the good things that have come out of this?
It's for me, it's about what opportunity will come from it. So just learning about the wrist a little bit more, anatomically, what exercises work well, things like forearm muscles, how to strengthen the forearm, how to gain grip strength, how different types of grip, and all these things that I'm going to be researching myself as I go, because obviously I want to get my grip strength in my forearm and my skinny arm that's going to get skinnier. How I can build those things up, I'll be looking at scientific literature, which I have been doing, training the uninjured limb to help with reducing atrophy in the injured limb. All these things that I'll do my own research on, because obviously I want to get myself back to it, is then going to allow that education and that experience to be able to pass on to other people, whether that's on social media, whether that's through the podcast, whether that's with my clients, anyone that has that same issue. That's the physical side of it, but also the mental side of it. And I feel it's with everything, people always talk about the best people in life are people that have come through adversity, that have had to deal with, and I'm not saying this is a big issue or that people
It is
die.
adversity. I think adversity is always context specific to the person. Someone else may not think it's adversity, but to you it's definitely adversity.
Yeah, and to someone else it could be a career-ending injury or something like that. But with adversity is an opportunity for you to shift your mindset and perceive a situation. Like we talk about, stress isn't real. It's just how you perceive a situation, and by perceiving the situation in a positive manner and what can I do now to better myself. Small things which I've always had that attitude. I've always plan, hope for the best, plan for the worst, and if this happens, at least I'll if I get if I get arrested, at least I'll be able to do push-ups in prison, like that kind of thing. If my right hand is injured and I can't do anything, at least my golfer's elbow that I have on my right arm is going to reduce a little bit because I'm not using that tendon for the next 6 weeks.
Yeah.
All these little things, it's an opportunity for me to focus purely on my hinging and my squatting. All these small little opportunities that then make outweigh the negative that you could focus on.
I think we're lucky in a sense that we work, we're knowledgeable, we have the knowledge of the body in the gym and training, and we're in an environment where we talk about the mental stuff all the time, where we have the skill set to be able to deal with something like an injury. We have a great physio here as well that we can bounce ideas off and have conversations with. Like, we're very lucky in that sense. It makes the process of coming back probably a lot less daunting for someone else, who perhaps picks up a similar injury and is not in the health and fitness space, is reading stuff on the internet, which basically tells them, like, your life is basically over, there's nothing you can do, or there's a million different ways to do it and they have no idea where to start. They don't have people they can trust, they can help guide them through the process. I guess to those people, having had this injury be really fresh in your mind and on your body right now, what's your kind of like, is there any parting wisdom you can send their way?
I would just, there's so much information out there now, like it's crazy, like how much content we're trying to churn out. There are people that are doing a lot more content than we are, but in all these different areas, in like injury prevention, in strength and conditioning, in weightlifting, or in nutrition, stress management, in sleep, all of these things. There's so many resources in YouTube, Instagram, let alone books and scientific literature, etc. Just go out there and research your injury, and you'll find those sources of information that are slightly more valuable. And obviously, you've got to sift through some stuff that might be a bit rubbish. But just as much as there's going to be negative or poor advice, there's going to be some pearls of wisdom that you're going to be able to find. I would try and have a chat with someone that other people have valued. Like if you've got a referral of a physio that's done a good job, or find if you know someone that's had a similar injury. I was fortunate enough that both you and Ant have had wrist injuries in the last X amount of years and have had to rehab them yourselves, which is great. I can bounce ideas off you guys. I'm going to be doing my own research. So maybe go and try and find some people that you think their opinion is valid, or like a professional, whether that's a physio. Go and get advice from someone else if you can afford to go and see a different physio. If you can go and see a personal trainer or someone that's used to injury prevention, go and type your injury into YouTube, type your injury into Google Scholar for scientific literature, go into Instagram and hashtag injury or whatever.
Message people who are talking about it.
Or message us. If you're listening to this and you want to know more about my injury or about the injuries that you and I have both had an absolute shed load of, we'd be happy to help out. And as much as we would, there are plenty of other people that you could reach out to on social media that would be willing to, because majority of the people that do this, that are in coaching space or personal training, do it because we enjoy helping people. That's what we love doing. So we're not going to be like, that's 20 quid for the initial consultation. We're happy to help. So yeah, go and bounce some ideas of someone, go and do your own research. But if you're resting on your laurels for it to just get better on its own, it's not going to happen. You need to really actively seek it. Just as much as with any goal, if you don't have a plan in place and you're not willing to put the effort in, don't expect there to be an eventual end goal or an outcome from it. You need to put the work in, but whether that's you working with someone else or from your own research, whatever it is.
Yeah, nice. I think whilst every injury might be different, there are certain principles when it comes to recovery that apply no matter what. From a mindset, from a looking after the body perspective, from a managing information, from a planning and periodization process. There's so many similarities. I know certainly I've had some very different injuries and strange ones, so have you, but a lot of aspects of the recovery process have looked the same, just with different semantics and nuances in terms of how you recover. All right, Paddy.
Nice. Guys, thank you for listening. We could have talked for hours about all the other injuries that we had, because we've got plenty, but we only had time for mine. Sorry.
Another episode.
Another episode for all the other injuries we've done. I hope you guys enjoyed, guys. Guys. See ya, guys. Nice, mate.
Well done, Paddy.
Solid.
That was a good one.
Yeah, that was good. Let me just do the intro.
Nice one to just listen to, that one.
Yeah. People might enjoy the story. Your head looks so skinny now that you've taken your headphones off.
It was a good story.
You told that was the best you've told that story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to step out.
That's good.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Liverpool